Okay, we're ready to go. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar entitled Secure Access to Business Critical Information. I'm Rob McDonald, Portfolio Marketing Manager here at Ricoh Canada and moderator. Today's session is focused on the challenges many organizations now face as they support an unprecedented amount of simultaneous remote workers, and namely how to adapt the way we communicate, access, and secure business critical information. Now, just some quick housekeeping notes to deliver before we set off. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available via email over the next day. We very much encourage questions as they may occur to you throughout the webinar. All participants have been placed in listen-only mode for the first part. So if you wish to queue up a question, please make use of the chat feature that you'll find located in the lower left corner of your screen. Our host, Chan, will flag those questions for the team to address at the tail end as we've allowed some time for Q&A. Should we run right to time, we'll ensure we contact you following the session with answers from Hans, Chan, or Kevin. So without further delay, I will now hand over proceedings to Chan Yunnerni, who will kick things off. Chan?
Thank you, Rob. As Rob mentioned, my name is Chan, and I'm the Product Manager here for Enterprise Workflow Solutions. I would like to introduce you to our presenters today, Franz Gangel and Kevin Morton. Franz is the director of our digital transformation consulting team. He's considered country's leading expert for all things related to document-centric digital transformation. We also have Kevin on the call today. Kevin is our manager for professional services and has over 2 decades of experience selling and implementing workflow solutions at some of the country's largest brands, ranging from retail, government, to higher education. So we have a lot of great content coming up. Let's take a quick look at the agenda here. So first off, we'll start off with the key trends around digital transformation in 2020 and post-COVID. We'll have a quick overview of the enterprise content management ecosystem. Franz will take us through all the different components that comprises enterprise content management, and then Kevin will come and share a great case study with us. We'll talk about some common use cases around ECM in different horizontals and verticals. Then we'll talk about, we'll get their expert recommendations on next steps. And finally, we will conclude the session today with some questions from audience. So audience, make sure you ask questions. You can leave the questions in the participant question section. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Franz Gangel.
Thank you, Chan. These are certainly unique times. As we are hunkering down following government guidance on social distancing, or we are responding to the urgent need for our essential services, all of us are taking a closer look at what is important in our business. We may have developed strategies for addressing local events and outages, fires or floods, or a power outage to our building. Some may have even taken a lesson from the SARS epidemic and prepared themselves with a digital transformation strategy. But few of us have prepared for a pandemic as we're seeing right now. Hyperautomation may be a new term to you. It's a term that describes a synergy between content management and automating business processes. It's about securing content, those generated internally by our staff as well as externally through our interactions with customers. And it's about securing content while making it available to our staff, whether they work from home or out in the field providing essential services. And it's about communicating with our customers with public access to that information or public access to request case information and address customer concerns. And as we consider what are our most organization's pressing need, I'd like to turn it back to Chan and open the floor to our first poll.
Thank you, Franz. This is our first live poll question, and we'll have a couple more questions like this throughout the webinar. The question right now is, what is your organization's most pressing need? And you have the options, 4 options on your screen. Please record your answer, and we'll close the poll in about 15 seconds and go through the results right after. I'll be closing the poll now, and we'll go to results. All right, so as you can see, 53.3% of the audience members recorded their response as work from home to be a priority right now. And then 26.7% said business continuity, 13.3% said data security, and 6.7% said cash flow. There's a bit of contrast to our previous webinar to this one. Data security was a priority in the last one. Here we are seeing work from home as a priority. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Franz again.
Thanks, Jen. Whether you are an existing user of an enterprise content management system or hyperautomation, or ECM is new to you, I think you'll benefit from the information we're going to share with you and the subsequent case studies that will be shared. When thinking about securing content when users are working from home, or you're concerned about securing information to generate cash flow and support business continuity, an ECM system can provide a significant value add. And it's helpful to think about an ECM system in terms of looking at it as an ecosystem of different modules and different capabilities that are all aligned together. I think a good way of framing up how you might look at these different modules in an ecosystem is by considering what some of the questions are that you might ask yourself for each one of these areas. One of the questions you might ask is, how can I store all my information in one place and be able to easily find it? So many of us, especially at this time, find that our information is on file servers, file shares. It could be in SharePoint, could be on OneDrive, could be in some other shared service. It could be on customer or our own laptops or staff's laptops. And getting access to that information can be challenging, especially at this time. Making sure that information is all in one place helps us to secure it, but it also helps us to find that information quickly so we can easily respond to requests. Business critical information is often created as part of a workflow process. You may ask, how can I eliminate repetitive tasks and free up my staff's valuable time? These days, it's more challenging than ever to collect and enter data from information that has been sent to us by paper or fax. And you may ask, how can I avoid entering data manually? How can I automate the extraction of that data from information that I receive? Communicating with our staff and our customers is more critical than ever. Communication often involves communicating by email or communicating documents of some kind. And you may ask, how can I generate documents or contracts dynamically and automatically? Many of us maintain forms on paper that we use to collect information. And while that worked for most of us, in today's world, that becomes a lot more challenging to distribute paper information and collect it back when we're all working from home. So how do I digitize my paper forms and capture information electronically, either from a web browser or from a mobile device? One very common form of workflow and electronic forms process is one related to agreements. You may ask, how can I get contracts or agreements signed faster using electronic signatures? With our staff distributed in a work from home, or in some cases in a work from home or a hybrid model, working in the field or working out of an essential service, it's difficult to get a view of everything that's going on. And so you may ask, how can I get an up-to-date dashboard view of all my processes to help me make quick and informed decisions? How can I use that information to make better decisions and to support analytics? And finally, all of these processes and content need to be secured. How do I know that my content is always safe and secure? Do I have the necessary protocols in place? The enterprise content management ecosystem addresses all of these questions and many more, and absolutely supports securing digital information both now and in the future as your businesses ramp up. So for our next poll question, I'd like to turn it over to Chan to ask, which area of ECM do you feel needs to be addressed most urgently? Chan?
Thank you, Franz. Yeah, as Franz mentioned, you have the question on your screen right now. You can choose more than one answers here, and we'll take about 15 seconds and then close the poll after. All right. I see audience still submitting their responses. Couple more seconds. All right, I'm going to close the poll now, and we'll go to results. Excellent. So we are seeing about 50% of audience mentioning security is something that they need to address right now. Workflow is 44.4%. Then e-signatures 44.4%. Very interesting. This is exactly what we have seen in the previous webinar as well. Security, workflow, and e-signatures being the top priority for customers right now. And oh, by the way, if the audience on the call wants to know more about electronic signatures and did not join our e-signature webinar on Tuesday, make sure to go back to the registration page on ricoh.ca, and you can see a recording of that webinar right now. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Franz again.
Thanks, Jen. So let's dive a little bit more deeply into the different components of the ECM ecosystem. Again, if you have an ECM system today, you may be taking advantage of some of these capabilities, but perhaps not others. And if you don't have an ECM system today, you can begin with one of these areas to address your most urgent requirements and then expand it to support others. In the content repositories This is about that centralized area to store and record and retain that business critical information. It's giving access to that information from a centralized digital repository. It supports optimizing decision making by getting the right content into the right hands at the right time. It avoids people making decisions without the correct information, which especially at this time can be very challenging and potentially fraught with risk. It also supports controlling costs by reducing the need for real estate to store files and helps support your business vital records from fire or floods. Part of hyperautomation is workflow, and that is the streamlining and speeding up of internal and external business processes that have now become digital through the storage and capture in the content repository. With a workflow designer, you can design custom business processes that assign tasks to individuals and groups based on their roles and skill levels, where the processing of tasks can be done single, in sequential, or in parallel processes. You can avoid the risk of improperly approved requests, such as invoices or new hires. And you can eliminate the circumvention of organizational business rules. Intelligent capture is about converting the unstructured or semi-structured data that is received on paper, fax, or in other means, whether by email or in other ways that they can come to us, by automating that scanning and capturing process and extraction of information from documents like invoices, contracts, or bills. The information extracted from scanned documents is used to create proper metadata, or data about the document. In the example of an invoice, we might extract the invoice number, the purchase order, the date, the vendor, and to automatically classify the document to respond to our corporate retention schedules. Intelligent capture converts unstructured data to structured data and supports scanning content from multiple locations at the same time so that it can all be stored in a centralized repository. Now let's take a look at processes where we want to move away from paper-based ways of collecting information to digital ways or electronic forms. Electronic forms is all about eliminating paper forms and reducing the amount of data entry required to process those forms. With electronic forms, forms can be processed quickly by automating the submission, the routing, the review, and approval process for that information. Because it can be available on a web browser or on a mobile device, users can participate in workflows while they're on the go and receive notification right at their mobile device when there are tasks waiting for them to complete. With centralized task management and properly defined approval processes, workflows arrive in the user task list waiting for them to complete, and then advance to the next user's task list when the first user's tasks have been fulfilled. To get up and running quickly, pre-built templates in our business process library help you to apply many different workflows to your current business and do so quickly. A very common use of agreement workflows and forms is agreement management featuring electronic signatures. Electronic signatures allow you to prepare agreements and contracts with a high degree of automation. You don't need to put wet ink on paper to approve and sign a document legally. You can automate the review and approval process between multiple parties with different roles assigned, such as a reviewer, approver, or a signer. You can collaborate and comment on drafts with multiple parties and retain the deliberations as part of a legally admissible record. Each signer can be identified following a method that's appropriate to their jurisdiction or the business type, using information such as the IP address of the user, their signature or voice, biometric, or certificate of completion. In a recent success, Ricoh was able to streamline a credit union's mortgage approval process and reduce the cycle time by 76% by implementing electronic signatures inside of a workflow process in a hyperautomation solution. Workflow processes such as agreement management and electronic forms generate some very helpful data to support continuous improvement. An analytics dashboard can support identifying inefficiencies and hidden opportunities in the process so that we can further optimize those processes to support our needs. It gives us line of sight to user activities even when they're disparate and working from home or in the field. We can estimate the time to complete future tasks and simplify reporting for those in an oversight role. And as we're all dealing in a stressful situation, it's helpful to know that we can monitor employee and departmental workloads to make sure that work is being distributed effectively. The security subsystem in an enterprise content management system supports giving access to the right user at the right time to the right content in the content repository, but also means that all of the changes to the system can be audited, changes to documents, processes, and metadata to support compliance mandates such as GDPR or DoD 5015.2, and that there are limitations put in place to business critical information for users that don't have the proper roles, rights, or privileges. Or another way to look at it is to make it more easy to share documents with people who need it urgently, such as when somebody is not able to fulfill the particular role or because of illness, a new person can be put in place and immediately be given access to all the information they need to do their job effectively. So at this point in the presentation, we've taken a look at what a content management system is and hyperautomation. We took a look at some of the questions that you might be asking in terms of how ECM might apply to your business. And then we took a look at a deeper dive into each of the different segments of a content management system. And hopefully you've been thinking about what areas we already have and what areas of an ECM system do we still need to adopt, or perhaps you might be thinking about a new content management system and how it could support us right now and what is most urgent for us to fulfill at this time. And it is now my great pleasure to turn over the presentation to my co-presenter, Kevin Morton, to take us through a case study. Kevin?
Thank you, Franz. I'd like to highlight this case study. I think it ties very well into what Franz has been talking about with the ecosystem of a content management system. This customer started out primarily with content management, and it's evolved over the years. And most recently, we started to look at some additional business process improvement, and they really looked in two major areas: accounts payable and information disclosure. The key with the accounts payable solution, this organization had 800 plus caseworkers that are taking care of our most vulnerable in society, families, children, and providing them care. They would incur expenses. Those expenses would need to be submitted to be approved. This was how they were delivering care to those families. There were over 100 managers and supervisors that needed visibility to those expense reports and those expense approval process. And because it was so paper-based, there was a challenge that caseworkers would actually have to go into a branch office to submit these expenses and get approvals, and that would be the only reason they would need to go into a branch office. They started this process over a year ago, but just think of that in today's day. They no longer have to go into an office to submit expenses that need to get paid so that we can provide care to the most vulnerable in the current state. And with all the increased challenges that people are going through, it becomes more and more important, and the value that it brings to the table becomes more prominent. There were over 20 accounting staff making entries into an ERP system. I mentioned it was paper and manual, and they had lack of visibility to expenses, and they even had to, at times, accrue up to $1 million over a year end because they didn't have access or quick, easy submission for associated expenses. So you can just imagine the challenges with cash flow of trying to get that moving through an organization. On the next slide, I'll highlight some of the areas of focus and the benefits. But I just want to talk about the information disclosure request. And this is a newer project within this organization. And there is an average of 30 requests made per month. And this is legal requests from caseworkers, supervisors, multiple different organizations or requests. And this is information about what is going on with this child or what's happening within family services and how do they need to address it. Well, some of these requests were complex enough that it could take up to 6 months to gather that information and provide it back, mainly because some of it was paper-based, some of it was with a caseworker, but there was no central repository to collect the data to feed it back. On top of that, there's legislation that's coming into place that, for great reasons, is asking these disclosure requests to be completed within 30 days. Remind you, this is about children and families, and this is about being able to provide the services they need quickly. And disclosure requests are about providing access to the information so that we can make informed decisions. This legislation will change how they manage disclosure, so they needed a solution that would help them provide that information back in a quick, easy, and effective manner. So when I look at the outcomes and the overall impact within this organization, we talk about paper. This has allowed caseworkers, employees, to not be burdened by the fact that they need to generate a piece of paper. Ron's talked about forms. Well, they now submit electronic forms to be able to process transactions for billings and working throughout the organization. It's resulted in a 35% improvement in the average work time. That's 35% of the time that a caseworker can get back to supporting those children and those families. The optimization of the AP process by eliminating paper and becoming electronic allowed that cash flow to happen. And if we all think about current state today, with all the restrictions we have, being able to provide funds to foster families to support the children that they take care of is massive. It is so important right now. This solution, again, I said started a year ago, but it's allowed them to continue to function in our current situation. This resulted in a 15% improvement in the average cycle time of processing an invoice and 30% reduction in the cost of processing an invoice. When we talked about the disclosure, I talked about the requirement for getting information back quickly. It's a governmental regulation, so this talks about a little about compliance. They have to provide these disclosure requests within 30 days. That alone is significant. When you think of up to 6 months for some of the complex requests, this results in a 48% improvement in wait time. And in my opinion, that's not even the most important piece. The fact that we're able to provide that information that will allow people to protect families and children is significant. In all of this, this provided significant more visibility and knowledge to their current processes and the financial impact that it has in their organization. They now have a better control on spending. They know they can provide the costing information and expense information, which limits or reduces the amount of accruals they will have to do. It's increased overall financial viability, and it's helped with accountability and transparency. These two projects are direct impact on some of the most vulnerable children and families in the region. I'm going to switch gears and just help you get a better understanding of where your organization can look at. We've talked about the ecosystem. We've given you some ideas. I think the case study highlights you may not have thought that when you're talking about content management, we could impact the ability to deliver services to children. However, we just talked about it. So some typical use cases when you think of sales, just leads, just sales leads. How do people register sales leads? Contract agreement and management. Franz talked about the case study where we leveraged electronic signatures, but that solution is beginning to end. It starts with a request for a mortgage renewal right through to the contract agreement, the signing, and then the transfer of the funding through the organization. End-to-end solution. Think of human resources. You have new employees, you have applications, onboarding. In simple processes to onboard an employee into your organization will have a significant impact on their entire employee experience. Finance, we have an organization that had our content management solution, and presented with the current state, they were struggling with how to get purchase orders approved through the organization so that they could actually continue to do business. The great news is they leveraged the workflow automation within the content management solution to build an approval process and a creation process for the PO. This allows them to continue to do business without having to physically be in an office. When you talk about IT operations, there are a lot of moving parts within IT and IT services organizations. This is about being able to track what's happening. I need to send out an asset. I need to be able to track it. Somebody needs to request it. So there's the ability to leverage the content management system to build workflows that start the process and then house the documents and the records. And then the last one is legal. I talked a little bit earlier about contracts, but having the ability to track, store, and record information all in one place makes it a lot easier. It's one place to gather the information. We don't have them in multiple disparate systems. Financial agreements, multiple elements can be leveraged within any organization with enterprise content management. I just want to switch it to verticals and get you thinking potentially in your specific vertical. When we think about higher education, we have multiple success stories where we talk about registration process within colleges and universities across the country, managing student records, working with taking a student record system or holding the student record within our content management system and connecting and uploading into the provincial education system. So we have multiple solutions that can impact higher education and K-12. Government, we have a massive presence in municipal government. We work with them for their records management. We also are working with them on approval processes, claims, even building permits within a municipality. Financial services, Franz talked about, I've talked about it, the credit unions. We work with several credit unions, helping them with content, helping them with agreement management, and at the end of it, application processes, forms to generate additional business and workflows. And last but not least, healthcare. We can help with managing medical records, registration process. There are multiple solutions that can impact our ability or any organization's ability to deliver care to their consumers, clients, or the public. At this point, I'll pass it over to Chan for another survey. Hopefully I got you thinking a bit about some areas. Chan, I'll pass off to you.
Thanks, Kevin. So audience, please record your response. The question is, which department within your organization needs ECM now? And we'll take about 15 seconds and close this poll. I'll be closing the poll in a couple more seconds, so please record your response. All right. So let's go through the results here. Finance is the department that most organizations want to focus on right now related to ECM. And then comes sales, then comes legal, and HR. So this is again in contrast with our previous webinar where the top department was sales. So yeah, interesting to see the contrast, and I'm sure people from different horizontals may have joined the webinar, and that's yeah, this is really good. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it back to Kevin again.
Thanks, Chen. This is great. This information. I think when you think of finance, and we talked a little bit right off the start about cash flow, and the way that you will move things through organizations. A lot of the stuff that I've just highlighted through the case study and the verticals, it's really driven around back office, and I think finance has a huge say in the back office for sure. So I just want to get you thinking about where do you go from here. We've given you a ton of information. We've talked about an ecosystem. We've talked about a use case. I give you some ideas of where you can start. But I'm here just to get you thinking a bit more. Where do I start with my content management solution? There's a need to digitize forms, create forms, whether it be basic application, a request for really anything. We have the eForms solution, which provides canned forms, very straightforward, easy to use. That's where you would start. You think you have business processes that you need to improve in your organization. The key with our solution is you do not have to start from scratch. There is a business process library which has standard sets of solutions or process automation. So there's HR onboarding, there's a PO process, there's invoice approval. So there's multiple processes already built, and then the whole concept is you start with a framework and you adjust it to your business. A need to manage agreements. This is about looking at electronic signatures and leveraging the technology that's there, that keeping the entire agreement from beginning to end, the creation to the retention of it, electronic, and keep it digital and electronic. E-signatures allows that to happen. I don't need to get a wet signature. I can use electronic signature and then store it. I need to give access to my staff to vital records remotely from anywhere. That's about the content repository. Given a place that we can centrally store and manage an organization's most crucial information starts with the content repository. And the next one is public may need access to it. In these current times, the public needs to have information. They need to capture forms. They don't want to have to go into a location to just get a form. So this allows people remotely through a web browser, through web services, through a mobile device to access information that you want to provide them. So giving them public access, public portals, web access. I have audits. I have concerns with audits. I have all this information I need to start sharing, but I need to track it. So there is secure technology audit trail. Who accessed the document, and if they've downloaded it, exported it out of the system, can they export it out of the system? We can control all that security. This is about making sure that when you have content and you need to share it remotely, you can control it and you have the comfort that it's secure. And the last one is, I need reports. I need to know what's going on. I need to know how often people are accessing the information. The dashboards provide that detail. The analytics within our tools provide you the information so that you can make that informed business decision. So the intent of this was to just get you thinking a bit more. I want to give you a little bit of background on Ricoh just so you have a better sense of who we are if you don't already know. We provide services to just under 1.3 million companies around the world. And we have been transforming the way we work and helping our customers transform the way they work. One of the best stories I can give you from a Ricoh perspective is when they put in the COVID-19 restrictions, we had, I believe it's 85 to 90 desktop computers within our organization. Of our 2,000 plus employees, we had laptops. So we could go mobile overnight, except for that less than 100 people. So we did not miss a beat with being able to support our customers by having the ability to be remote. And the nice thing is we have services available to organizations that can help be mobile and support your staff and your customers remotely. And we've got an entire portfolio of services that support that. And I just want to highlight them here, and then I'll pass it back to Chan. Document processing services. This is managing bulk images, invoices, and accounts payable transactions. We have a few very, very, very large customers that are still active during this time, and they need to get invoices processed, and we talk about cash flow. This process is in place, and these customers, they have stated that if it was not for the solution that we provide, they're not sure they would be in business through this. In addition, we have communication services. When we're talking about being mobile, being remote, the communication services department is all about collaboration. We are at a different world right now where everybody is remote. Our communication services team provides solutions that allow organizations to function as if they're all in one location, but from multiple locations. So that team is dedicated to that collaboration. We have our content management and workflow, everything we've been talking about today. We have a team that just focuses in on providing access to your information, managing agreements, getting stuff through your organization. So anything that's paper-based, this team would be involved with. We have our on-site managed services team, not necessarily front of mind at this time with a lot of locations being closed, but Ricoh has people on-site at customer locations for essential businesses that still need to function. We are providing services in mailrooms, copy rooms, keeping their organizations running. We have those services as well. IT services, one of the biggest challenges that most organizations face today with the changes in the world of work with COVID-19 is infrastructure. Nobody expected that 99% of their staff would be remote overnight. Well, it's happened. So our IT services team can support with cloud services, access, expanding your infrastructure, firewalls, gateways, everything to protect your organization and allow you to continue to function with the change in how you function. And then our e-discovery services, our legal e-discovery. This is a specialized service around legal documents and managing those documents. The key is the e-discovery service is finding the information that you need in the agreements that are there. And then the file analysis component is about ensuring that the information that is most crucial to your organization, personal information, confidential information, is protected and not exposed. And I just wanted to give everybody the overview of our services, and I'll pass it back to Chan, because mostly we are going to be talking about a lot of these services in our webinar series. So Chan, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. That was a really good overview, and Franz, to you as well. That was a fantastic webinar. Before we go into the Q&A part, I want to bring our audience attention to the upcoming webinars. Make sure you join these webinars. There's a webinar happening in few days, April 21st, around fortifying and securing remote workspace. Given a lot of people expressed security is a big emphasis area for them now, I would strongly recommend you join this webinar and take advantage of the content. So with that being said, I'm going to now move into the questions part. So we do have some good questions from audience today. The first question, this is for you, Franz, is how do I know which process to automate first?
Sure, Chan, thanks. So I would say that each organization will be a little bit different because they have different requirements, but I would tend to focus on areas that are going to impact work from home, cash flow, and business continuity. So take a look at how the organization makes cash and how could ECM workflow hyperautomation streamline those processes, and focus there.
Excellent. Next question. Does our ECM come as a package with forms and repositories, or do I need to purchase them separately?
That's Kevin, I'll take that one. Yeah. The best way to describe it is we do provide an all-in-one solution. I think understanding your needs will provide additional value. So the solution is available with all the feature set. In certain instances, we'll do some evaluation, and there may be not the full requirement for all the services. So we can take modules off, but generally speaking, the solution provides you everything you're looking for. It's a matter of whether we enable or disable that feature, and how do we leverage it.
Great. Next one, Kevin, this is also for you. Is this information stored on-premise or on cloud? And the second part to that question is, if it is stored in cloud, where is my data stored?
Sure. Thank you, Chan. Quick answer is it depends. So it's not a great answer, but it depends. Most organizations it depends on how you're using your environment. So we can do it. We have on-prem solutions. We have solutions that can be hosted. So if you have a hosting partner, it can be hosted in a third-party environment. And then we have pure cloud solutions, so software as a service. All of our solutions that are hosted would be data residency in Canada, so there's no concern there. But it's really dependent on what's right for your infrastructure. Some organizations are completely getting out of the infrastructure, and they want to put it in either a cloud or a hosted service, which we could do, but it is data residency in Canada.
Excellent. Last couple of questions here. Next one is, why would I choose Ricoh ECM solution versus some of the other available brands in the market?
Yeah, thanks, Chan. I think there are many different ECM systems in the market. I think one of the reasons that customers choose Ricoh's ECM solutions are that they're easy to use and they're supported by a breadth of services from consulting to delivery to training, because we understand that the right ECM solution is a holistic approach to solve our customers' business challenges.
Very good. We may have time for one last question, and the last question here, Kevin, this is for you, is does the customer need to pay upfront for their ECM solution, or do we have annual subscription options? I guess, in other words, perpetual versus subscription?
Yeah, so we have both options. We have upfront, so we would call them perpetual solutions, upfront cost for the software, and then there's an annual maintenance agreement. And then we have subscription-based services, which gives a little bit more flexibility and changes the procurement model as well as the cost of the entry point. In addition to that, there is the one-time professional services, but a lot of organizations, we will phase it in. I think it's really hard to implement everything all at once, although some organizations do, but we'd like to sit down, get consulting involved, and understand what the best path to getting to where you get to. As Franz mentioned, what is the immediate requirement and what's the end goal? We would definitely work with, and the nice thing is we have different options to support that.
That is great, Kevin. Thank you. And with that, I would like to conclude the Q&A part of this webinar, and I'll hand it off to my colleague, Rob McDonald.
Thank you, Chan. So on behalf of the entire Ricoh team, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Just to note that in a moment when you do exit the meeting, you'll have a chance to provide feedback on today's session. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and goes towards helping us produce better content and improve the user experience for future webinars. As well, a reminder to please watch your inbox within the next day for a Ricoh email that includes the webinar recording, as well as information on how to reach one of our enterprise workflow solution professionals to learn more about how we can help you further adapt to the new world of work. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.